this video, we're going to take a look at the new Tri Planar projection node. Now, this has got to be my favorite feature of Substance Designer 5. So let's jump in and take a look at how this works. To help me with my demo, I have my little buddy Charles here, and so what we're going to take a look at is adding some dirt on top of Charles. And so typically what I would do is use one of our mask generators. So here in the graph you can see that I have the dirt mask generator, and here's the effect that we get. Now this dirt generator has some mesh data, and you can see that I'm just inputting in some curvature and ambient occlusion information, so some mesh data that I baked from the model. Now with Substance Designer 4 and Substance in general, when we work with these procedural noises, we are projecting this procedural noise in UV space. So your UV shell orientation and thus the UV texture borders are going to have a dramatic effect on seams with these noises. So for instance here with Charles, you can see that I'm using this noise to add some dirt. As I start to rotate around the model, sure enough we have this terrible seam running across the head here. And this is typical of something that you would run into when you're using the mask generators. However, with Substance Designer 5 and the Tri Planar, we can actually eliminate this altogether, so we never have to worry about seams again. So now, let's run through the process of utilizing the Tri Planar node to fix this issue. So you can find the Tri Planar node here in the library. I just do a search for Tri space P and it shows up. That's how I typically find it. I can never remember where these things are here in the categories. So what you want to do is just take the node, just left click, drag and drop, and place an instance of it here in your graph. Now actually I already have one, so I'm just going to remove this guy. Now a couple of things to note about this particular node itself. So it comes in two flavors. It has the color version and the grayscale version. They work exactly the same, except one is for, well, color and the other is for grayscale. I'm actually going to demonstrate the grayscale because this is where I'm probably going to use it most often, is when I'm working with my mask generators. So here we have this instance of the Tri Planar grayscale here in my graph. Now another note of this, if I just hover over the node itself, I'm going to get some information. And so one thing that this node takes is a bit of mesh data itself. Here, let's zoom in and take a look. So you can see the Tri Planar, both the grayscale and the color, take in position and world space normal information. What the Tri Planar is going to do is it's going to create a 3-axis projection. So as I said earlier, before we were only working with projection in UV space. However, now we're working with a 3-axis projection in world space as created by our position map and our world space normal. So again, we're going to be looking at this projection in world space versus this UV projection that we had previously. Now, just a note of this, we also need to make sure that when we bake our position map, we need to use the B-sphere normalization. Let me just show you that. So here I have my model, and I'm just going to come over to the model that I baked with and say bake model information. For this demo, I was only just baking the body itself, and so here you can see that I have my world space normal map. Now for my position, I want to make sure that my normalization is set to B-sphere. Now by default it's set to B-box, so we're going to change this to B-sphere, and I also want to make sure that I bake in 16-bit. Now in order to do that, I just need to choose a format that accepts 16-bit. Now the baker is going to use the highest bit depth that it needs. But that's going to be dictated by the format. So in my case, I'm using PNG. PNG can be a 16-bit format, so Substance Designer is going to take care of this map being baked in 16-bit. So here we go. That's the only kind of setting that you need to be aware of when you're baking your position map. So I've actually already baked it. We'll just cancel this. So now that I have my data baked, here you can see that this is going to be I believe this is my position map, and this is my world space normal map, and I've just plugged these guys into the Tri Planar node. Now I need to supply the actual input that I'm going to project. In the case of the Tri Planar grayscale, you can see that we have just a grayscale input. For the color, it would obviously be just a color input. Now in my case, I wanted to create a noise, or I needed to, basically what I wanted to do was I wanted to project this grunge map across my model. So I started with just a noise to stand in for my grunge map. So here, just from our library, I grabbed the noise, so I grabbed the spots too, so I have this noise, ran a little levels effect on it just to brighten it up a little bit, and this is going to become my grunge map. However, it doesn't have to be a procedural noise. Like if I have grunge maps that I want to utilize from my library, I could link those in and use that as well. It doesn't matter. You don't have to start with a procedural noise. You can use a bitmap. Just in my case, I'm just using spots for the demo. And so I feed this into my input. Now, let's take a look at the Tri Planar node. So I'm going to double click to load this into my 2D view. And now you can see that this node has taken the noise, or our grunge map that we have, and it has projected it across the 3 axes in world space. And so this is what we get. Now we have various controls for this. So if we take a look at the parameters for the Tri Planar, you can see that, well, we have projection. In my case, for the mass generator noise that I want to create, I want to use all axes. But let's say that you want a very specific axis to line up correctly. Maybe you're looking at like a cube and you want all of the sides to, line up. Maybe the UV shells will rotate in different directions. You could say, well, I only want to do projection across the X only, or Y, and so on. So you can change this. But like I said, for the mass generator stuff, I'm going to leave it to all axis. Then you have some settings for your blending contrast. This is where the projections are going to blend, and then you can actually tile this as well. So for instance, if I start to increase my tiling, you can see that I'm just tiling this noise, and that can be important because when you're working with different assets, different UV layouts are going to dictate different scales, and so you can use this tiling to adjust the overall scale of this noise to fit different assets. For this, I'm just going to leave it close to something like this. I can't remember what I actually had that set at, but we'll leave it here. Then you have the actual X, Y, and Z projection axes, and we have rotation values for those as well as offset values. We'll take a look at that once we actually see this working on the mesh, but you can see that you have the ability to rotate and position on all 3 axes with individual control for each axis. Okay, so now that we've just kind of run through what the node is, let's go ahead and finally hook this thing up. So here is the dirt that I was using before. This is what we see. Here's the seam that we're getting. I can also show you that we're using the exact same grunge map in this case, so it was just that noise again. We're just feeding that in. This is what we get. However, what we've done is we've taken this grunge map, we've processed it through the Tri Planar projection, and now this is going to become my new grunge map that I'm going to feed into my dirt. So we'll just make this connection now. And just like that, our seam is gone. So the noise has now been projected in world space, and we'll never get another seam on the model again with this noise. We don't have to worry about it. We are now completely seamless with our procedural effects, which is incredible. This has just been one of those issues that would always come up and cause problems like this, and it's awesome now that we now no longer have to worry about this. And so as you can see, we have our grunge map. The grunge map is being projected correctly. We don't have to worry about that anymore. And now we're running that grunge map that's been projected in world space to the mass generator. And now we still have all of our same controls for the mass generator. So for instance, I can work with my dirt level, decrease this down. You can see that this particular dirt is working with ambient occlusion. So here you can see that in my ambient occlusion areas, we're collecting more dirt and so on. But now I never have to worry about those seams again. So here you go. I'll start to just really increase this dirt level, quite a bit. And here you can see, seam's gone. We don't have to worry about it anymore. Now let me just back this dirt level off just a little bit, and let's just go back to that Tri Planar projection node. Let me just kind of get this into an area that we can use. So here we'll take a look at this guy. We'll go back to Tri Planar projection, and like I said, you have control over each individual axis here. So for instance, if I want to offset on the Y, I can do that. So this is offset Y, and then you have X and Y controls. So if you want to try to, really tweak what's happening with this projection, you can do that, like I said, on an individual axis here. And so we have rotation values and so on. So yeah, a lot of fine-tuned control with this ability with Tri Planar projection. And so like I said, the real powerful way of utilizing this is with the mass generators. So for instance, like I said, I was using dirt, and then I'm just piping that here into my material color blend. With my material color blend, I'm just going into the channels for base color, normal, rough, and I'm just propagating that effect down through these channels. And again, it's all seamless. So just to recap, if you're going to have a grunge map, you import the grunge map. You're going to want to process that grunge map first through the Tri Planar, then you hook the output of the Tri Planar to the actual mass generator itself to get a seamless effect.